Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because, honestly, what we're looking at is just completely fascinating. We are taking the standard rules of language and literally turning them into a survival toolkit for the natural world. If you're an eco tour guide, grammar isn't just some boring test you pass. No way. It's your frontline defense. It protects fragile environments while making sure your guests have an absolutely unforgettable experience. Let's uncover the language of conservation together. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. Your guests have traveled thousands of miles, they've spent a ton of money, and they are finally standing in this beautiful, serene natural reserve. And then, suddenly, they hear someone shout, "Don't pick flowers!" Boom. Instantly, the magic is gone. The tourist feels like a scolded child, and the whole experience, along with your 5-star review, by the way, is completely ruined. That aggressive command is exactly why we need better language tools out on the trail. We absolutely have to communicate those critical rules without wrecking the vacation. So here's our training roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the Eco Guide's mission, rules and freedoms, the politeness scale, explaining cause and effect, and wrap up with grammar as conservation. Let's get to it. Starting off with Section 1, the Eco Guide's mission, balancing protection and experience. Which brings us to Section 2, rules and freedoms, drawing the line. You know, every single day, tourism professionals face this massive challenge. You're effectively acting as law enforcement to prevent environmental damage, but you also have to be the ultimate welcoming host. It's a tough balance. This brings us to the foundational tool you need to clearly draw the line between what's legally forbidden and what's totally safe and encouraged. Notice the structural breakdown here. We're dealing with two highly effective modal verbs, mustn't and can. And what makes these so user-friendly out in the field is their universality. They stay exactly the same no matter what the subject pronoun is. Plus, they connect seamlessly right to the action verb. Check out the detail in the formula. You never, ever use the word to after these modals. It's literally just the subject, the modal, and the base verb. Simple as that. And this brilliantly illustrates how we use these modals in the tourism sector to really draw that line. Think of mustn't as your strict prohibition or damage prevention, like you mustn't touch the historical rock formations, or visitors mustn't leave the designated walking trails. But we balance that strictness with can, which gives permitted freedom and alternative choices. You can take photos here, but without a flash, or guests can camp only in the official green zones. By giving a can right after a mustn't, you're instantly swapping out a rigid, boring restriction for a fun, safe alternative. It's a real game changer. Now, here's a fascinating little linguistic quirk to keep in mind. Look at the pronunciation of mustn't. When you're speaking to a group, that first T is completely silent. It's just mustn't. Go ahead. Try saying it out loud. Mustn't. Dropping that silent T really smooths out the sentence and helps you project this natural, effortless authority on the trail. Of course, there are a couple of conversational traps that can trip up even the most experienced guides. Notice the incorrect phrasing here. He doesn't must walk. In English, we never combine must with auxiliary verbs like do or does. It's simply he mustn't walk. Similarly, definitely avoid saying things like, you mustn't to feed the birds. Modals are never followed by to. It is always, you mustn't feed the birds. Keeping this structure clean keeps your instructions sharp and, honestly, incredibly easy for international tourists to understand. All right, moving on to Section 3, the politeness scale, softening the blow. So, to manage groups effectively without completely ruining the vibe, kind of like we talked about with that flower picking example earlier, we use this scale. For formal prohibitions, we stick to a neutral, highly professional tone. It is not allowed to swim in this lake, or it is forbidden to feed the wild animals. What this does is take the blame entirely off you and puts it on the official rule. Pretty smart, right? Then we have active care reminders. These are warm, proactive structures you'd use before an excursion even begins to encourage positive behaviors. Things like, please remember to bring your rubbish back, or please make sure to close the gates. Let's move to and see how this builds, stepping up our customer service game. Step 1, don't pick flowers, is a direct command that just feels aggressive. Step 2 levels up that customer service. It is forbidden to pick flowers. This is the polite passive. It feels objective and totally fair. But Step 3 is the absolute gold standard. Please remember to protect local plants. This active reminder shows genuine care. It completely reframes a restriction into a warm invitation for the guest to become a protector of the environment alongside you. Now, I gotta warn you about one crucial grammatical trap to avoid on the trail. When you're using phrases like forbidden or allowed, Always use the full infinitive with the word to right after them. Don't say it is forbidden feeding the wildlife. Always say it is forbidden to feed the wildlife. Getting this little detail right ensures you sound entirely professional and crystal clear. Now for Section 4, Explaining Cause and Effect, the Science of Rules. You know, guests are just so much more likely to follow a rule if they actually understand the scientific why behind it. To educate them, we use this blueprint, the zero conditional. Ecotourism agents use this bad boy to explain general truths, scientific facts, or automatic natural outcomes. It consists of an if or when clause representing the condition, a comma, and a main clause representing the result. Notice the tenses here. You use the present simple tense in both sections. Let's look at some highly practical examples of this in action. If you drop plastic bottles here, it damages the local ecosystem. Or, if visitors make too much noise, the birds fly away. Do you see how perfectly this works? You aren't just barking orders at people trying to enjoy their holiday, you're actually giving them a fascinating, immediate science lesson. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the visual balance. On the left, the IF clause, if tourists slate fires in the present simple. On the right, the main clause, it destroys the forest, also in the present simple. This tense acts as a perfect scale, weighing the human action equally against the natural reaction. It creates this sense of undeniable scientific inevitability. You can also easily reverse the structure to add a little variety to your speech. Just put the result first, followed by the condition. Water becomes scarce if we waste it at the campsite showers. The grammar is exactly the same, but notice the punctuation change. When the result comes first, we drop the comma entirely. The word if ends up doing all the heavy lifting as the bridge connecting the two ideas. Okay, a major tip here, don't forget your core present simple rules. If your condition or result mentions a singular subject, like a tourist, a visitor, or an animal, you absolutely must add an S to your verb. Saying, if a tourist drop litter, just sounds unclear and unprofessional. You must say, if a tourist drops litter, the park becomes dirty. This real-world clarity keeps everyone on the exact same page. And finally, Section 5, Grammar as Conservation, the climax. It's time to bring all these communication modules together. We use mustn't versus can to clearly establish safe boundaries. We use polite passives and active reminders to communicate with five-star politeness. And we use the zero conditional to scientifically educate our guests on consequences. So, the crucial point is this: your language matters. A dropped S causing confusion or an aggressive command that makes a guest completely tune you out can lead to real-world noncompliance and ultimately genuine environmental damage. I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Can mastering a simple grammar rule actually help save an ecosystem? Well, when you look at the evidence, the answer is an undeniable yes. Your words, your sentence structure, and your delivery, they are the mechanisms that guide human behavior in fragile spaces. Master this toolkit, and you won't just be an excellent guide, you're going to be a true guardian of the natural world. Thanks so much for exploring this explainer with me, and I'll catch you next time.